Yes. So, my name is Jorma Imppola, and I'm a lecturer. Not my life. Okay. I'm teacher and lecturer in Seinäjoki University Applied Sciences, and my basic fields are logistics, quality management, sustainable management, and economics, and so on. And today I will talk you a little bit sustainability, because today, what kind of businesses you have and so on, the sustainability aspect is bigger and bigger all the time. I will put the camera off, so I think that the sound would be better this way. Okay, so the topic is holistic sustainability and how to overcome the effects of COVID-19. So first, let's go to the basics. The first time sustainable development was defined by Gro Harlem Brundtland in the famous Brundtland report in 1987. And it is said there that sustainable development is development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is very simply said, we should make today decisions that we are not eating from the table of our children. And all my life, I was born in 1964, all my life we have been more and more over-consuming. And we have came to a situation that, for example, rich country or high-income country like Finland, our footprint is 3 times higher as it should be. And you saw there this concept, holistic sustainability. So I will explain a little bit of that for you. So the sustainability contains 2 key concepts. First, we have the needs. The essential needs of the world's poor, or to which overriding priority should be given. It is interesting that most of these nice philosophies and even religions have this very, very simple definition that in this harmonic society, everybody give according to their abilities and receive according to their needs. And now we go to very, let's say, thin ice when we talk about needs. The needs here means that the needs for survival. They don't meet the need for amusement or the need for satisfy your greed. Very famous definition was also by Mr. Gandhi, who said that the world is big enough for everybody's needs, but it will never be big enough for somebody's greed. So we have to forget the greed and focus on those actual needs we have. And also, which is very important and especially very difficult to take it in account in modern economy, which is based on growth, is that we have limitations. These limitations are imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. And that is something we have failing very badly. I think that the Finland's overconsumption day was in end of March. And that means that if everybody in the whole world would consume and utilize these resources like we do in Finland, the all year quota would be utilized by the end of March. So definitely we have serious problems to adapt or adjust our needs to these actual resources, these limits we are living in. Okay, this is the classical thing. The 3 dimensions of sustainability, the social, the environmental, and the economical. Sadly, the discussion has been very long time focused only for the environmental issues. And of course it is important, but if we look only environment, we many times fail to understand that many environmental issues and problems are caused by social unsustainability or economic unsustainability. So thinking deeply, these three pillars or three dimensions of sustainability, it requires systems thinking. And this ability or this willingness to look all these three simultaneously instead of just one or two of them, that is what I call holistic sustainability. We really, let's say that if we, for a better consciousness, pay a little extra for plane ticket to compensate it, and that makes for us feeling justified to fly around and so on, that is absolutely not understanding the holistic sustainability. And I think that rich countries, we really, I think the biggest problem is that we have too much money. Every country, Finland included, we have one group, one socio-economical group, which is very sustainable already. They are very thinkable when they are buying something. They don't buy anything which they don't really need, and they are very rational. And those people are the poor. But it is like a paradox of our success is that the more we have financial resources, the more we are misusing them and the more unsustainable decisions we make. Okay, this is my view or my idea how you should see and understand the holistic sustainability. The three pillars, the environmental in the middle, and then the economic and social or cultural pillars, they are of course there, but they have foundation. And pillars are not enough if the foundation is weak. So first of all, we have to understand that there is not we and them, not us and them. They are only we, because we are inhabiting together this lonely planet, and our planet is our homeland. So really, as soon as we as consumers or as entrepreneurs or even as politicians understand that all our decisions about sustainability, they are global. That means that we cannot make them without global awareness, without understanding the trade-off of every action we do. And then when we identify that we are working in global homeland, we are creating the global awareness, maybe we can also take the global responsibility. And the global responsibility lies very heavy on the shoulders of us, the richer quartile of the world. And I will show you later on that the only way to have really balanced sustainability, holistic and balanced sustainability, and allow also those who have very little, let's say, good things in their life nowadays, allow them to have some which we take for granted, it requires us dramatically cut down our footprint. And how we can do it, that is really quite a nasty challenge. I think politicians has been saying very long time already that they are not stupid. All these problems which are around us, many times they know what should be done. That is no problem. But the problem is that they don't know how to do it without losing in next election. So we, the people, we are very unforgiven if somebody tries to put us and control our behavior to better direction. And yet if we are operating freely, results are not very sustainable. So, middle of September 2019, the pre-COVID world, happened very, very interesting thing. Financial Times have they put a new headline, and the headline was that it is time to reset the capitalism. And it is change of paradigm. The old business paradigm was that the focus of business is on maximizing profits and shareholder value. That's it, nothing else. But this is, the time has passed this thinking, and now we have to understand that we have to make a profit with purpose. Profitable business is always the only way of making sustainable entrepreneurship. It is not very nice idea that you are otherwise great company, but you are losing money. You will die eventually. Companies will come to understand that this combination serves their self-interest as well as their customers and employees. So yes, profitable business is the key element of healthy capitalism. But today's or tomorrow's more holistic capitalism wants that companies will create value added simultaneously to shareholders and their customers and their employees, so that company can meet the ever-tightening and more sustainable needs of customers. That is both environmental aspect and also an ecological aspect, and also a little bit of economy. Also, the employees should be one interest group, not as paid slaves, but they have to be part of the success of the company. So the social and economical aspect is very strongly there. And then, of course, the shareholders who are taking risk and investing in the company, of course, they are also earning a slice of that profits. But these three interest groups, the shareholders, the customers, and employees, should be seen as like a joint partners in this, equal partners. So this idea that only take care of the shareholders and pay no attention to customers and employees, that must be forgotten. That is old paradigm, and we have to replace it with a new one. So without this change, these risks which are facing us can be very painful. So the new business paradigm is that we have to maximize simultaneously the profits and shareholder value, of course, customer and consumer value, and employee and worker value. And even here inside of European Union, we have a lot of debate about it. For example, one of the recent ones has been the discussion that are the workers who are working for this like Foodora or Volt or so on, are they entrepreneurs or are they workers? And this is very interesting borderline to put there, because there has been plenty of examples when these people have been utilized quite strongly in order to maximize the company profit and not so much maximize the employee satisfaction. The only way to achieve this truly holistic, sustainable global development and enable simultaneously the new business paradigm is to recognize and include all the three pillars of sustainability. Because, as I said earlier, many times those things we easily label under category of environmental sustainability problems, they are in fact created by economical sustainability problems. I can give you one example. I don't know if you know the concept Sahel. Sahel is south of Sahara and north of jungle. It is something between the Sahara and jungle. And the Sahel is going south every year. So the north part of Sahel changes to Sahara, and the south part of Sahel is going south, and let's say in a way eating up the very rich natural environment of jungle. And why it's happening? It is not to, the climate change to blame, that is human activity. There is a lot of farmers there which are utilizing the land, and when the land dries, so there is no more nutrition, they will cut down the jungle, the trees, and burn it. So they have fertile land for a while, a lot of nutrients. But as the fertile soil between the over the sand, there is like maybe 5-6 centimeters, it gives you only 1 or 2 crops, maybe 3. Why not more? Because these farmers, they have not enough money to buy fertilizers and all these new and improved ways of agrobusiness that we are using everyday basis in European Union. So they are drying out all the nutrients of that land very fast, and when it stops being fertile anymore, they cut down more forest and burn it down so they can have fertile land. And this, of course, is very bad for the environment. It is serious environmental problem, but we cannot solve it without solving first the economical sustainability problem of the farmers. If they would have enough income so that they could utilize the more advanced technology, the better ways of farming, and they could afford these fertilizers to keep also giving to the country, not only taking, this cutting and burning would not be necessary. But as I said, this is just one example how really serious environmental sustainability problem is actually economical sustainability problem. And globalization has brought, of course, a lot of development and even prosperity into the world, but often with the price of social and economic exploitation and inequality. And this has created severe sustainability problems in our globalized world. What is really making me angry is that we, for example, in Europe, we have a long time ago created these absolutely necessary laws to state what is the acceptable working hours, what are acceptable working conditions, what is acceptable salary. And we learned the hard way that we have to solve these problems if we want to develop the society as whole. And nowadays, if you want to run any kind of business in European Union or in Europe, you have to follow these basic guidelines. But many companies, instead of following these European or North American strict and quite expensive rules, instead they are outsourcing their activity to developing countries, not having this kind of legislation. And they are practicing same kind of production and employee and even technological methods, which would be illegal in Europe. But they are practicing that in developing countries because many times very corrupted governments of these countries, they don't have this law, or if they have, they don't overview it. So we have made it possible to outsource bad behavior to developing country. And what is that if not economic exploitation and social exploitation? And this is an interesting question for us. I remember when I was very young in late 70s, and people were very active in that time. And there was one saying which I liked very much and like it even today. Do you want to be part of the problem or do you want to be part of solution? And every time we go and buy something of the cheap fashion or whatever, it is no secret for us that it is made by child labor with slavery-like conditions of work, very dangerous working conditions, and brutal exploitation of the nature by spilling all the chemicals directly unpurified to the nature. We know it. We have seen, all of us have seen all the documents about it. And yet, we don't care. If any of that would happen in Europe, it would be scandal, it would be boycott, it would be serious outcry that really how this can be happening. But when it's far, far away, we don't care. And that's why we are part of the problem. Globalization should be positive thing, nice thing to disseminate technology and disseminate ideas and so on. But in some cases, globalization is nothing more than modern day colonialism. And this is something which cannot be tolerated if we ever want to have holistic sustainability. As the holistic sustainability is all-inclusive and interactive concept, the sustainability problems cannot be solved without understanding and improving all the three dimensions of it. So we have to understand not only the environmental aspect, but also the consequences on economy and social unsustainability, how it also contributes the ecological unsustainability. So, if we want then to define environmental sustainability, of course, we must define sustainability in the first place. And sustainability is the ability to continue a defined behavior indefinitely. So if we could create sustainable way of life, there is no limits, no reasons why we shouldn't keep on doing that indefinitely. But everybody is painfully aware that this Western commercial or consumeristic way of life is definitely not sustainable. Somebody calculated that if everybody, the whole population of the world, would have the consumption pattern or consumption behavior footprint of Europe or North America, we will kill this planet in less than 20 years. So it is definitely not sustainable. And again, there is the serious paradox that why we allow ourselves to behave like this, and then we are advising the developing country, no, you cannot increase your CO2 emissions. No, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, because it will destroy the world. And simultaneously, we are doing the same. So what is our moral right to say no for these ideas of other nations if they want to just copy what we are doing? So if we really want to change the consumer pattern and footprint of the world, we have to show example. We have to show that, yes, we can cut it down. We can meet the sustainable equilibrium that is feasible, so that we can then all continue our new sustainable behavior indefinitely. And to define what environmental sustainability is, let's look what experts are saying. First, we have to conserve and enhance our resource base by gradually changing the ways in which we develop and use technologies. There is very, very nice saying in quality management: don't do more, do better. And all my lifetime, I have been indoctrinated and taught to make wrong question. And the wrong question, which my generation and maybe the generation before mine, and sadly also the generations after me are making, is that how can we have more? How can I have more? More. And maybe we should really revalue what we actually respect and like in life, and learn to make the correct question. And the correct question is that how we can do with less. I just some time ago, some weeks ago, I watched the famous movie, The Fight Club. It is quite nice criticism of certain way of life. And from that movie comes one very nice definition, a definition of our, let's say, consumeristic life problem. And that is that many of us, skillful, clever, highly educated people, we end up wasting our lives in the work we don't really like in order to make a lot of money, so we can buy things we don't really need in order to impress people we don't really care. And what can be more paradoxical than that? Especially when we are doing that stupidity and fueling it by using more and more non-renewable natural resources. So we have to be aware of the limitations. We have to understand that there is no planet Earth 2.0, there is only this one. And we have to, if we want to survive on the surface of this planet for thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, we have to, let's say, justify our behavior according to the actual resources. Okay, this is one picture I made some years ago. This shows very nicely. First of all, this is the global population, and you can see that the development. Can you see by my cursor here when I move it? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as you see, since mid 1800s, the population has grown quite, let's say, peacefully until 1950s. And what is very interesting is that here is the energy consumption, but it correlates also the consumption of everything else. And it has been very nicely following the same until 50s. So I think that before 50s, we were on holistical balance. We were really inside of the perimeters of the resources. But then came the consumerism and so on in full power. And also our life condition improved, our medical and these medicaments and so on be improved and so on. So the population has been rising quite aggressively. When I was born here in 1964, there was like less than 4 billion people living. And now I think we are very, very near of 8 billion. So during my lifetime, the world population has doubled. And during my lifetime, our consumption has been like 4 to 5 times higher than earlier. So we have been overgrowing our consumption based on our population. And this is the result of the wrong question, how we can have more, how we can have more. And sadly, this is not so friendly in heritage. My generation and also the baby boomer generation is handing to you, to your young people. You have to face the music that really we have overutilized the resources and overpopulated this earth, and really how we can deal with it. Here is some examples. Human activity has created 10,000 times more extinction than normal extinction rate is. We have been releasing 80 times more mercury to the, let's say, biosphere circulation than normally there should be. We have increased erosion to 6-fold comparing to the natural. We have been moving land masses 2 to 3 times more than natural take. For example, now latest news is that we are really overusing the sand. Now the shortness of sand is serious because we are demanding astronomical quantities of sand to make beton to our nice construction projects. And really good sand which is acceptable for beton, it is running out very fast, and there is even smuggling and stealing of it very large scale happening. And we have managed to put something down. Comparing to the normal natural photosynthesis, we have managed to cut 20% out of it. And this is mostly by cutting down rainforests and so on. So, yeah, our activities have definitely not been insignificant. Here is then one example how you can see the shocks of our economic system affecting our busyness of burning things and emitting CO2. Until the 2008 economical crash, it was really strong growth. Then it was like a little breathing period here, microscopical declinement, and then back to the business as usual. And we were already starting heavy, and then COVID-19 cut down seriously our activities, flying and traveling and industrial production and so on. And of course, CO2 was decreasing very much. And in mid 2020, when situation was on, I was a little bit hopeful that maybe this COVID disaster and nightmare can teach us something. Maybe we can find a way how we can exist, how we can operate with less emission, less footprint. But no panic. Very soon after the first wave came, we recover, and now we are back to business as usual. And people are flying and traveling and so on. So the CO2 footprint is very fast recovering, and I think we are already in higher level than pre-COVID-19. So the shock was not enough. It seems that it was warning and we didn't pay any attention about it. So the first year of COVID-19 really cut down the global CO2 and other emissions very dramatically. And it was the COVID-19 shock was more than 3 times higher and bigger than the 2008 financial crisis drop. But as I said, very, very fast we have been also recovering and going to our old patterns of consumption and, let's say, not so nice behavior. According to the WTO, the world merchandise trade volume is expected to increase by staggering 8% in year 21. And then we have now here is the 2020 crash. And now it seems that we have both positives and negatives. Positive is that, like, I think every country except Germany has now basically lifted all the corona restrictions. But now we have the energy crisis within us because of the Ukraine war. And it is interesting to see, will the higher prices of energy be more efficient motivator to cut down the CO2 footprint than the lockdown and COVID. But again, why we have to learn this cutting down with catastrophes? Why cannot we just change our behavior? Okay, the development during the previous 200 years, of course, has witnessed very significant growth of GDP and life expectation. I think this picture shows it very. No. Okay. 200 years ago, the average lifetime was, even in rich countries, like about 40. And nowadays, the average lifetime is more than 70. And there has been very significant correlation between the wealth, so the average income or GDP, and the health. So even today, there are some countries which are sick and poor. They have very low level of income and they have very low life expectancy. And then we have plenty of countries like Finland having quite high wealth level, GDP per capita, and also very long life expectancy. And the thing is that, as I said earlier, if we continue treating those developing countries like neo-colonialistic areas in which we are paying miserable salaries and so on, they will never prosper. The GDP not rise, and that's why they will stay sick and poor. If we want them also to have the longer lifetime and so on, we have to allow them also to get wealthier. And that is not possible if we don't want to pay full price of their work. Really, if a salary of, let's say, basic simple factory work in Europe is the level of like 2,000 per month, how we can even allow that it can be in some very, very poor developing country like $100 per month? No, $100 is not enough in any corner of the world to have acceptable life. We had that situation in Europe in 1850s. In that time, we have like 14-hour days and no weekends and non-stop working and salary, which was making you only having more and more debts to the company shop. And we understood that this is not good and we have legislations against it. So why we tolerate it? Why we accept that companies can utilize subcontractors for that kind of countries, and why we, the consumers, tolerated that these fast fashion or cheap fashion things are made by very badly paid slaves. Okay, interesting result or comparison is the first time in human history when wealth was researched. It happened in Italy in the end of 1800s, and Italian researcher Vilfredo Pareto published like an article or presentation in 1906, and he said, based on his research, that 20 richest percent of the Italian adult population owed 80% of the Italian land. So the famous 20-80 ratio originates from there, and today, after 120 years of very wise politicians, even wiser economists and very clever businessmen, now the result is that less than 10% of the world's richest people own 84% of everything. So can this be described as a progress? If it was 120 years ago, 2080, now it is like 9.5 to 84. I didn't see any I cannot see any progress here. And is this really the best we can do? Is this the tangible, concrete result of economics in last 120 years? Rich get richer and poorer get poorer. And this is, of course, the world famous like wealth pyramid. And it really shows that there is not so many people in the top, but they own huge quantity of everything. And then the bottom billions, they have very, very little, if nothing. And this has been even more, let's say, blown up during the pandemic. Now, the latest result is that the ultra rich have been benefiting the most, and they have become much richer and so on. And the poorest people, they have even less than they had before the COVID-19. So all these trillions of dollars and euros being put in the revitalization of the economy and so on, it is interesting that they have not helped the poor ones, but they have been accumulating astronomical wealth for those who are already rich. So the COVID-19, first it hit the advanced economies and also the low income countries. They caused about 6% deviation with them. Also, the emerging market and developing countries were hit by over -3% deviation. And the biggest difference between developed countries is the fact that when the developed countries are correctly recovering very rapidly and fully from the economic shock of COVID-19, the emerging market and developing countries experiencing only moderate recovery, and the LIC, so low-income countries, keep on declining. So, yeah. Whatever happens, it seems that we, the rich, are the winners. the COVID-19 pandemic is hurting most of the countries which have less advantageous situation to begin with. So even because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rich countries get eventually richer and poor countries get eventually poorer. So let's say that sadly, no surprise there. This seems to be the general pattern. Then something about social and cultural sustainability. Also, developing countries, they have to be allowed to meet the basic needs of employment, food, energy, water, and sanitation. Many things which we take for granted, even when I was young, we took it for granted. Certain level of food, energy, water, and sanitation, it is still a dream for 2 or 3 billion people. And this is also interesting that all this help and aid and development and so on, the situation has not changed very much. If we really want to do this in a sustainable manner to allow these basic needs to be met, there is a definite need for a sustainable level of population. Now, this is going to very thin ice, population control. Because we have different religious aspects here, and really the only way to have sustainable development in the long run is to have certain quite strict control over the growth of population, so that we don't let the population exceed the level that how many we can feed. Because if we go near that point, we will see a lot of violence and nasty behavior. Despite all of our culture and nice thoughts and so on, humans have proven to be very brutal animals if they are lacking some basic ingredients of their survival. Social sustainability is a quality of societies. It signifies the nature-society relationships mediated to work as well as relationships within the society. I don't know which this is. Is it more social or economic? But many times it is explained that, but the unemployment, which is of course very serious factor when you trying to improve the quality of life for people, that yes, but unemployment many times is because the workers are demanding so high salary. And that is quite easy to contradict, because if the salary would be the only factor of employment, how there can be unemployment in really, really low income countries like Bangladesh or something like that? If even the lowest salary countries have unemployment, then really how it can help if we make the salaries even smaller? I think that the question is much deeper. It is no more the question of salary. It is the, let's say, the social and economical sustainability concept in general. Social sustainability is given if work within a society and related institutions, so that we have to satisfy extended set of human needs. One interesting element of social sustainability is the versatility of cultures. Is there anybody among your students who is from France? Any French people there? I will look there. So the red yellow hand if there is anybody from France. So no yellow hands. Why I mention France is that France has very long time ago started a program in France that there must be in every media, television and so on, a certain quite high ratio of French culture, French movies and French programs and so on, in order to protect their own culture. And there has been a lot of criticism that why this is not open economics and so on, but nevertheless every culture is worth protecting. And if there is a monoculture which trying to overwhelm everything else, these social aspects must be taken consideration. And one of our very need is to the togetherness, need for togetherness. People like to be among same kind of people, and they have created cultures and so on. And that's why, for example, it is quite crazy that many of us are thinking that our culture is the best. And we want to discard all other cultures. And this is definitely not socially and culturally very sustainable way. Of course, we have to also respect the human rights and values. It is also not good idea that somebody comes and it is totally okay to cut pieces of the female reproductive organs because this is our cultural habit. Some cultural habits are definitely not worth preserving, but that it should not be excuse to have this cultural mono thinking. We should allow also this many versatility in culture too. So these arrangements are shaped in a way that nature and its reproductive capabilities are preserved over a long period of time, and the normative claims of social justice, human dignity, and participation are fulfilled. What is really here something we should learn, we the rich, and it is helpful us to understand it and learn it if we want to cut down our footprint, is that already there is a lot of cultures. We call these countries developing countries or low-income countries and so on, which have cultures with quite happy people. And their happiness is not because they have so much of things, but they have friendship and they have communal values and so on. And maybe this is also something we have to understand when we talk about this holistic sustainability, that maybe we can rediscover some values which were overpowered or overwhelmed with this consumerism. So we can replace the consumerism with more sustainable values, like, as I said, friendship and enjoying arts and so on. Sadly, we have this material fetishist idea that there always been some kind of electrically operated gizmo to provide us some satisfaction. But many times these gizmos, they are just things we don't need. They are only, how you can say, they are like replacement of those really valuable things we have lost, like the togetherness and family values and so on. There has been growing interest in policy and among scholars to consider culture as an aspect of sustainable development and even as a fourth pillar. Okay, it is worth debating, should there be social pillar and cultural pillar, or could they be joined together, but it is semantics. The scientific discourse on cultural sustainability is organized around 7 storylines: heritage, vitality, economic vitality, diversity, locality, ecocultural resilience, and ecocultural civilization. And especially what is worth of really researching and learning is that how we can create this ecocultural balance. So then we can find a way how to exist in the ecological surroundings without taking too much. Cultural sustainability is also can be seen as instrumental or contributing to the achievement of social, economic, and ecological goals of holistic sustainability. Culture is the necessary foundation for the transition to the truly sustainable society. And we all had it. If we look, for example, in Finland or in Germany or in Spain or in Czech Republic, whatever, if we look 100 years behind, really everybody has very small footprint at that time. And it was, today it is like new innovation. Oh yeah, circular economy. That was the only way 100 years ago. Nothing was wasted. Everything was recycled. I remember that it was like a little bit of a joke that in 80s and 90s that yes, have you seen that your grandmothers and grandmothers, they have all the strings of string and rubber bands, they save everything, and they have, if you go to the like this workshop of your grandfather, you can find that in little jars and tins, screws and bolts and springs and whatever, which are from 20s and 30s and 40s. And we find it amusing. But really, that was circular economy. Nothing was wasted. And really, if something was broken, they always could improvise some solution with all these things they had. Nowadays, if something is broken, we don't even bother to fix it. We throw it away and go and buy a new one. And this is definitely something we have to unlearn. This picture is telling you the whole story about the sustainability problem. This dotted line here, that is what are the limits. This much resources there is available for every humankind in the world. This red pillar, this is us. Our pillar is 3 times higher, almost 3 times higher as it should be. And then, lucky for us, there is still 3 to 4 billion people which have very, very, very small footprint. They are the poor. But what we should learn about these people so that we can unlearn this unfettered consumerism, because we cannot say that no, you cannot buy a refrigerator, it will destroy the world. And no, you cannot have a scooter. Oh, no, you cannot have a car. We have to allow these basic amenities which are improving the quality of life. And that's why we have to allow them to increase their footprint. But to do it sustainable way, simultaneously, we have to cut down ours so that we can meet here in the middle in sustainable equilibrium. So that we only utilize the share which is belonging to us, not like this huge overconsumption. I can give you some numbers. 1980, not so long time ago. I can guarantee, by the way, in 1980, we didn't live in the caves. We have electrical heating, electrical saunas, electrical stoves, electrical lamps. We have radios, TVs, stereos. So basically all those important things we so much want, we have them in 80s. And in early 80s, the total consumption of electricity in Finland was 40 terawatt hours. Today, it is almost 90 terawatt hours. And according to the latest, let's say, prognosis, because of the electrification of the cars and so on and so on and so on, the total consumption of electricity is estimated to be about 160 to 170 terawatt hours by 2050. Why we need so much electricity and everything else? Is it really necessary? Is there something we might be, okay, instead of having electrical things running around, this nice lady here has a broomstick and she manually cleans the yard there. And maybe she hasn't have 27 pairs of shoes or 20 skirts or 50 t-shirts. Maybe she has. But really, are we happy now in the West behind all of these purchases? Are we happy? Or are we striving the wrong kind of happiness? Okay, here is one overview. The more red, the more heavily consumption. And we can see that, surprise, surprise, North America, Europe, Australia, Saudi Arabia. These are the countries with very big ecological footprint. And then the low footprint areas are Africa, here in India, and in Central America and so on. So there is plenty of people having already very nice small footprint. Maybe instead of making them to emulate us, maybe we should learn something about them, how they can have life without this heavy footprint and overconsumption. This is a built and our picture I really want to show my especially young people. We are now about here now. Here. And what is history? This is based on facts. This is really statistical fact. And what is here in front of us? That is a prediction. It is definitely not any kind of, let's say, roadmap or prophetia. This is what will happen if we keep on doing the business as usual. If everybody would be like my generation also in the future. And if you look this mishmash, there is some very, very unpleasant information there. For example, it is estimated that the maximum population of the world would be met about 2050, 2045. And it will be somewhere between 9 and 11 billions. Now we have 8, so we are very near of it. And what makes this picture very, very bad is that the available resources, they have been dramatically cut down. Verified existing resources of many very important metals like zinc and copper and so on, they are like 20, 30 years, maximum 50 years. Only aluminium is a little bit more, it's like 80 years or something like that. But most of these resources we are known, they are depleting very, very fast. And of course, what is very serious here that I think we are now enjoying the peak of food per capita. Now we are having the last legs of the really smörgåstable, the buffet table of the world. But very soon in the future, because the population keep on rising and climate change and some other elements are cutting down the productivity in agrobusiness, the food per capita will be declining very fast. And it is really interesting question that can we handle it peacefully? But I have to say now, what is in front of us, this is the worst case scenario. This is if we do nothing. But if we really can change our behavior, if we can really understand and implement holistic sustainability, all this nightmare, all this really worst case scenario can be avoided. But it requires, especially for us in the rich countries, to exit permanently from our comfort zone and cut down seriously our footprint. Are we willing to do it? That is a really interesting question. So, how well the holistic sustainability in the world been able to meet the current and especially future challenges? And there is, I can close my presentation with 3 aspects introduced by Klaus Schwab in his article in 2020. First, we have to steer the market towards the fairer outcomes, bearing in mind environmental and social risks and opportunities, and not just focusing short-term financial profits. This short-term profit maximizing is one of the biggest mistakes we have made in economy, in my point of view. One very wise man, very rich, let's say, media mogul in Finland once said when interviewed that, the interviewer asked, okay, Mr. Erkko, what is your opinion about the quartal management? And he said, no. You don't run a company by looking 3 months backward. So you run the company by looking 10 years ahead. And definitely that was great. You cannot create sustainability if you look 3 months behind, but you can create holistic sustainability if you look 10 years or 50 years or 100 years ahead. So the result so far has been that the striving for the global equity has experienced recently most disadvantaged condition because of the Covid-19. As I said, rich have become richer and poor have become poorer. And of course, if you look which countries paid the heaviest toll on COVID, of course, those countries which cannot finance the vaccination for the whole population. Both the initial shock and later recovery process has only widened the gap between the rich and poor. Secondly, ensuring the investment purpose set goals such as equality and sustainability. And this must be not only short-term profitability, but really that should be a value per se, that we have to have these goals in our investments. Both US and European Union has allocated astronomical sums of money for COVID-19 pandemic recovery. So far, the investments have been stalled or delayed because of political debate and disagreements, yet mentioned aims for equality and sustainability improvements are still valid, especially in the European Union. There is already a very critical discussion that is this COVID recovery money, is it utilized properly and how it should be utilized, and should be earmarked for sustainable investments or what? And it seems that there is absolutely no agreement on that. Thirdly, we have to harness the innovation of the fourth industrial revolution to support the public good, especially by addressing the current health and social challenges. And this is maybe the most important message for you when you are thinking and planning these business plans of these new IT applications and so on to have smarter society and so on. How we can use the fourth industrial revolution, the automatization, digitalization and IT to enhance these really sustainable discoveries and innovations. Don't do more, do better. This is without a doubt the biggest challenge, especially in the developing countries. So far, the inequity gap between the rich and poor countries, regions and people has only been widening. So can we have this kind of innovations which could help narrow down this gap instead of widening it? So can it be narrowed, or are these innovations benefiting only the advanced countries and only the biggest mega companies and only the richest who have better possibilities to finance these innovations and whose infrastructure is developed enough to support these innovations? This is an unpleasant question. Of course, we would like to have global development. That is the whole idea of holistic sustainability. But can these even green or cycle economically motivated investments, can these also just widen the gap between the rich and poor? No, not exactly, but I had 1 minute left. So hopefully you have some questions, comments, critiques, ideas, because I want it deliberately to be really let's say, how you can say it, contradict, so that I can aggregate some discussion or ideas out of you. So, ideas, comments. I closed my, so now you can open the mic from the classroom. So if somebody has some comments or questions or ideas.